Hey there, Katie Kimball for the Healthy Parenting Connector at Kids Cook Real Food. Today we're going to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my own crunchy little green heart because when I was a kid, one of my favorite books was 50 Things Kids Can Do to Save the Earth. And I was constantly doing weird things around my house that I read about in the book, and I didn't always do them right. So my mom did not love that book as much as I did. But I've always loved I've always been passionate about taking care of the earth. And so today I'm really pleased to have Sandra Harris, founder of ECOlunchboxes with me. She's also the author of Goodbye Plastic, a huge topic that's really, really important today. Every little bit that I can save matters a little bit, but if we can get everyone doing the same thing, it's going to make so much more of a difference. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Yeah, it's a joy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so just so that people kind of know who you are, Sandra is the founder and president of EcoLunchbox, a mission-based consumer products company. Her passion is protecting the oceans by reducing people's dependence on plastic. And oh, we are dependent, aren't we? It's gotten so bad. We've been connected with Eco Lunchboxes for probably, goodness, if my oldest is 15, we're talking probably 10 or 12 years that we've been using Sandra's products for our lunch packing. And she really came to this with a vastly diverse background: business consulting, product development, investigative journalism, digital marketing strategy, and motherhood, not to be forgotten. And she had work in the nonprofit sector for a humanitarian aid organization. So Sandra is enjoying the ocean all the time in the San Francisco Bay Area with her family, and she wants all of us to make it prettier. So
That's right.
how did you get started, Sandra? Where did your passion for this subject grow?
Yeah, well, I was always a really earthy kid and have always been extremely connected to the earth. Whether I was out on the water, kayaking on Tamales Bay here in California near the Point Reyes National Seashore, or hiking up in Yosemite doing the backpacking, nature was always my number one happy place. I mean, as a kid, I would hang out in the creek behind our house and build fairy houses and climb trees, and it was always my coming back to place. But in terms of plastic, it was just something that really picked me. When my son was 3 and it was 2003, I mean, think back 17 years, no one was really even thinking about plastic. We were completely using it reflexively without any thought. I mean, isn't that just what you were supposed to use? And plastic sort of jumped up and grabbed my attention. And it's probably because I have this journalism background. I get so curious. And
Mm.
I was just like, well, what is plastic made of? And what plastics are good and what plastics are not? And is it the squeezy plastic or the rigid plastic or the plastic with the 5 on the bottom? And I just went down this like huge rabbit hole of research trying to figure out, and here's where the motherhood part comes in, what would be the best, safest way for me to pack my preschooler's lunch?
Hmm.
And, it's amazing, what a loving mother and environmentally oriented person can come up with if they're motivated by love, passion. And I was a little scared, but scaring people into stopping using plastic isn't nearly as powerful as loving them into it,
Oh,
if
I love
that
that.
makes sense.
Absolutely. We're going to get more bees with honey, or well, no, what is it? More flies with honey. I guess the bees make the honey. Um,
Exactly.
for sure, for sure. And I always, for myself, I always come back to the idea of like, sometimes it feels like the little steps don't make a difference, but we have to trust that they do, right? If I can use a disposable napkin and for 2 meals instead of 1 meal, I've saved 50% of the trash. Like that was one of my first sort of rationales. Now we use cloth napkins, but it was, for me, it was just like, wow, I could literally save 50% of my trash in this area by making that one tiny little shift, never on taco night because that's really messy, but just reusing something one time. So then how plastic, I mean, you have this interest in plastic and lunch packing. And I think now 2003, not so much. 2020, 2021 here, plastic is in the news a lot. We've got the straws and the turtles. Oh no, all the straws are bad. We're seeing those massive like islands of plastic in the ocean. Are they really? There's one like the size of Texas, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty good the way they initially were describing the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in terms of this massive accumulation of plastic out there in the Pacific Ocean. North of Hawaii, sort of south of Alaska, it's where the currents swirl
Mhm.
together all of the plastic that is washing off the land masses. And then it kicks around in the waves in the sun and it breaks down. I think, you know, it caught everyone's imagination and brought a lot of attention to the subject. Now they're really describing it as a plastic smog, that's really more of an accurate depiction.
Ew.
Because if you were to fly over that area in a plane, you're not going to see Texas,
Okay.
made out of plastic, because it's all this particulate matter
Oh.
that has broken down, just by tossing around out there in the waves and getting kicked up onto the beaches and washed back out and all of that. So now they're describing it more as a plastic smog,
Mm.
out there, not just in that gyre, but in other gyres,
Yep.
throughout the world. So people are kind of shifting how they talk about it.
Okay.
But it's accumulating.
Right.
I mean, you can talk about garbage trucks a minute. You can talk about all sorts of statistics. And I think it's pretty well known now that we're on a very perilous path. Um,
Yes.
but going back to what I was saying before, I mean, we're having so many challenges right now, especially during the pandemic, whether it's our health, being at risk, or our finances being at risk, or feeling upset about the political situation. As much as I want to educate people about all the facts around plastic, I also just want to light them up in my book, Say Goodbye to Plastic, with a possibility of living joyfully, more cheaply, more simply without plastic.
Mhm.
Um, so it's
That's
this balancing act, as we try to engage people in the plastic free movement.
yeah.
Um, we want to really invite them, not set the bar so high, like you see on Instagram, that there are these influencers who somehow, and even I don't know how they do it, over the course of a year, only generate enough plastic trash to fill a mason jar.
Mhm.
And, it is inspiring to think of that possibility, just like when we think of mountaineers who are able to climb Mount Everest. But for some of us, we just want to, tackle the hill in the neighborhood, you
Yes.
know. Or in the case of my book, Say Goodbye to Plastic, a survival guide for plastic free living, I'm really inviting people through the telling of my own story, and starting with my son in preschool and trying to pack a lunch back in 2003, that as I got into the research, I realized, hey, this plastic, it's pretty shifty. I'm not really sure what's in plastic. And I'm hearing something about BPA. And then, over the many years that have passed, a lot more information has, come out. But through the telling of my story, and, not that I'm some perfect person, who is living 100% plastic free, but I have set my GPS, like you get into your car, where are you going? I'm steering towards plastic free. I'm approaching my life with a plastic free lens. So as life is happening, I'm looking for opportunities to say goodbye to plastic again and again and again. So in my book, I encourage readers and I inspire them and I embrace them, and I'm not judging them. I'm not up on some pedestal, but I hope that my readers will see me as a guide and as a friend. And it's totally available to all of us, whether you know anything about plastic free living, you can start
Yeah.
wherever you want.
I think it makes it almost more inspiring, Sandra, that you are, just a normal mom asking questions, heading
Yeah.
in the right direction and taking steps, and not already this like pinnacle of impossible perfection.
Mhm.
And I think you're right that plastic is so much more in the news. We have a greater, world consciousness about this problem, but for sure the work is not done yet. And I think perhaps part of your mission is to convince people that they individually can make a difference. I was just talking with my husband about a mutual friend, And he was saying, well, this guy is very environmental. He votes environmental platform. He works for a company that prevents pollution from going in the air. And I'm always surprised when I go to his house and see single-use plastic water bottles. And here's what this guy says about his use of single-use plastic water bottles. He'll grab one from the fridge and go, well, I know I probably shouldn't be using this, but it's such a little bit. It doesn't seem like it would make a difference, even though his mindset's already like eco-friendly guy. So how do we convince people that it all matters?
I know this is like such a hard question. Over the years, people have said to me so many times, like, it's easy for you, Sandra, like I have some superpower that they don't, but for the rest of us, this is really hard, and they really thought like, hey, that lady's eating too much granola. What's going on over there?
Like it gives you superpower, anti-plastic
it's
superpower.
Not a she. It's not something that other people are needing to do. It's a we. And so when I meet people that are lovely, amazing people, but they're still using plastic water bottles, the last thing I want to do is judge them or alienate them, because this is a we thing, and he may be doing a lot of other wonderful things, right? So, I mean, I often approach it with humor. It's like, hey, what do I need to tell you? That there's going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. That the scientists have come to a calculation of the amount of tons of plastics that are accumulating in our ocean, and compare that, to the fish. And is that going to convince you? It's probably not, but it might open up a conversation, right? Or maybe, and I talk about this in the book, when I was growing up, the song Message in a Bottle by the Police, and this guy out on an island calling SOS to the world. And, he sends out a message in a bottle, hoping to connect with someone because he's so lonely. And then he wakes up the next morning and there are hundreds of billions of bottles that have washed up on the beach on his last island. Listen to it on Spotify, like with a new, perspective of plastic-free living. It's an amazing song, Message in a Bottle by the Police. And I was like, hey, I could tell him, do you want, your bottle to be one of those hundreds of billions of bottles washing up on the shores of beaches everywhere? Do you really want to go to Hawaii and try to do a little snorkeling and have like bottles like bobbing around, everywhere? Or, some people, they get so touchy and defensive, and you certainly don't want that, because that's when they're really shutting down and they're not going to be receptive. Just don't say anything at all, and just bring your water bottle, not a word.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, it's like, do you have, like, could I get a little tap water? Let him suck on his plastic bottle. I mean, he'll tune in, right? But there's no room for judgment. I mean, we certainly don't want to make this a partisan issue where people are fighting about it or judging each other. I think Marie Kondo, in her book, The Magic Art of Tidying Up, kind of approaches minimalist, tidy living in a similar way to how I advocate people approach plastic-free living. She says, you've got a slob in your house. Don't judge them. Don't fight with them. Don't force them to do stuff that they don't want to do. Certainly don't touch their stuff. Same thing with plastic-free living. The best thing to do, whether it's trying to live a tidy lifestyle or a plastic-free lifestyle, is just walk the walk. You don't need to talk so much. Walk the walk.
Yeah, well, when my husband and I were talking about that, we looked at our stainless steel water bottles on the counter, which were given to us as Christmas gifts by my mother back when we were very, very poor, probably 15 years ago. I think my oldest, was a baby. And I thought, goodness, how many times do you think we've refilled those in 15 years? And I did sort of a thought experiment. I said, if those were plastic water bottles and we started stacking them up in our house, how many rooms would be completely floor to ceiling full of water bottles? And I was thinking maybe the whole first floor, like,
I love
15
that.
years of two adults using reusable water bottles. Like, that is a lot.
Yeah, I love that. Extrapolating out, how all of these small choices that we make, really do amplify And, you know, with people, you know, who are reluctant to get started, you know, sometimes, to your point, about quantifying, you know, estimating, you know, the impact that we have over time, you know, he might be moved. You know, we've done an ECOlunchbox, and I talk about this in my Goodbye Plastic book, a study looking at a typical American family who sends two kids to school 180 days a year, because that's how many school days there are, and one parent working outside of the home. Also, just for 180 days a year. I'm not talking about like after school sports or vacations or anything like that. And we estimated how much trash would that family generate only during lunchtime if they packed a conventional lunch. And it added up to, you know, like over 3,000 pieces of trash used and disposed of just during lunchtime. And then if you look at, well, what would the cost have been if instead of buying, for example, single serving applesauce tubs, cheese sticks, disposable utensils, paper napkins, you know, all of those things, you know, cost a few cents more, right? Well, what if that family had, you know, gone to, you know, Costco or purchased some, you know, larger quantity of applesauce and portioned it out into reusable containers? Used a reusable napkin, stopped buying and disposing of the throwaway forks, et cetera, et cetera. That family, that very same family, would have saved over $450. Basically, they were paying $450 for all the packaging on these prepackaged, easy single-use items, totally unnecessarily. So for some people who are thinking like, oh, those hoity-toity eco people, you know, not everyone can afford to do it. It's too hard, or it's too expensive, or this and that. I'm like, now wait a minute.
It's expensive garbage. You're buying trash. Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did a
it's
little
like, really, you want to be throwing your money literally in a trash can, bam.
Yep.
Like, makes total, like, no sense at all. And then they kind of, you know, widen their eyes, are like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I was just thinking, you know, to buy like one of our stainless steel ECOlunchbox containers, you know, it might cost between $10 and $30, depending if it's a modular set. And they're just thinking, you know, that's a little sticker shock. I'm not so sure that, you know, we really want to invest in that. And I'm like,
back to school money, it seems like a big chunk, but when you extrapolate it out, I mean, like I said, we've been using some of your lunch boxes and other brands for over 10 years. They're still in daily action. I can't even imagine how much we would have saved over buying disposables, or even just buying, you know, plastic lunchbox pieces and parts, because they break over time. They fall, they just get old, they crack. We're constantly losing our plastic lids to our, you know, glass dishes. They're getting cracks and stuff. And every single stainless steel item that we have purchased, we still use, and we have 4 kids, so they are really often.
Those plastic lids on the glass containers are just the bane of my existence. They really gouge you too when you want to buy replacements. It's so tricky. Yeah, so we do offer lid replacements. Our lids are silicone, they don't crack, they're dishwasher safe, they're even oven safe. So they provide that leak proof functionality, you know, without any plastic, without any BPA, you know, none of the downsides of plastic. And if, you know, kiddo were to, not that this would ever happen, but, you know, if there were to be a lost lid incident, like, no sweat. We've got the lids, they're reasonably priced, you know, the shipping is cheap, and it's no big deal. But back to your point about how everything rolls up, on our website, we publish our planet impact at ECOlunchbox, looking at, since I started the company in 2008, we have sold nearly 1 million lunch boxes worldwide. So we sell direct to consumer on our website, ECOlunchboxes.com, but we also sell in stores and in Canada and in Europe and in Asia and everywhere, because our products are so unique that our whole line is entirely plastic free. anything that anyone buys on our website, it's plastic free and it ships plastic free. And the tape on the box, of your shipment is plastic free. And if it ships UPS, it's carbon offset. And there are no
Wow.
pillows and there's no plastic packaging. There's no, nothing. So from soup to nuts, so to speak, we're deeply 100% plastic free. So then going back to, nearly 1 million containers, like 900,000 to date have been sold. And we worked with a team of MBA students to look at what the environmental impact rolling way up, right? With our whole user community,
Yeah.
estimating how long they're using them and obsolescence, that every year our user community is averting the use and disposal of tens of millions of pieces of trash. I started this company on my kitchen table
Hmm.
with little ones, like running around. The Container Store is calling. I'm like, sweetie, just eat your snack.
Aw.
I mean, so the book, I hope, can inspire people to think, she didn't have, any secret sauce, magic wand. And through her efforts, she's been able to have an impact. Think about what I can do in my own home with my own family.
Yeah.
And
So let's talk about that, Sandra. What are some really just practical nitty gritty tips for someone who's just a rookie at this, feeling a little overwhelmed about attempting plastic free? Obviously, step one is just head in the right direction, right? But what are
right.
just some first steps that folks should take?
Okay. Well, especially during COVID times, I feel that, a lot of people are discouraged because
Mhm.
some of the first things that I would have recommended prior to the pandemic would have been bring your own grocery bag, bring your own produce bag, bring your own, cup to get your
Yeah.
coffee.
Are you seeing that the produce and grocery bags are not allowed reusable now?
Well, not in our area in
Okay.
California, that a lot of the bag bans have been rolled back. And so the grocery stores are worried about having their checkers and baggers
Right.
touching bags and, in the case of zero waste shopping, like glass containers that have weights on them so
Right.
you can buy in bulk. And I used to buy like my meats and cheeses and deli items
Yeah.
all in reusable containers because on
Mm.
the bottom of our containers, we have the tear weights, the weight
Yep.
of the container etched so that the checker can just back out the weight of the container. So anyway, but my advice, and it is a challenging time out in the world to live a zero waste plastic free lifestyle. That's just the way it is. Sometimes, not everything is within our control.
Sure.
So one quick tip, a couple of quick tips about COVID plastic free lifestyle. One is there's some, and I have a blog up on our website as well about COVID and living plastic free during a pandemic, but you can
Mm.
simply have them put your groceries back into your cart, wheel your cart to the car, and then bag your groceries yourself, into reusable bags in your car. That's a great way to not use the single use. And then for online shopping, I was talking about how all of our shipments are plastic free.
Hmm.
Like, try to find companies for your online shopping that do carbon offsets, that do plastic free shipments. And if you're still shopping with Amazon, you can request that your Amazon account be flagged for plastic free shipments.
No way.
Get
You
into
can?
the chat function. Yep. Yeah, get into the chat function and you're going to get some robot and
Yep.
they're going to ask you lots of silly stuff. Just keep persisting. And when you get the human, say, I want my account marked so that I don't receive any more plastic in my shipment. So they've started this as a new program.
I love
Right.
that so much because it kills me. I mean, I do shop online. I wish I didn't, but I do because, like you said, you just can't do it all. And it just kills me when things will come one little item in this huge plastic, envelope or like all of the plastic poofy stuff in there. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm killing the earth. And then they have started, I've noticed some like all paper recyclable padded envelopes, and I'm so happy about that. And I'm even more happy to know that I can push the envelope, so to
Oh,
speak,
I love
and
that.
choose my own. Oh my goodness, that's like the best tip ever, Sandra. Also, I have
Yeah.
to say, I was totally a rebel even in like March 2020. the signs showed up at our grocery stores, no reusable bags. And I thought, that's not logical. I'm just going to stand at the end and bag my own stuff into my own reusable bags, and I'll be the only ones touching them. So I never changed my own
Oh, good
crunchy
for
habits. I
you.
have continued reusing everything I want. And I just like, I just say, hey, do you mind if I just bag my own? And they're always like, sure.
Oh,
But
that's
I
great.
don't live in California. It might be a little bit tighter over there, but I do
Around
live in Michigan.
around us, yeah, unfortunately, they're not allowing that. The Trader Joe's near me has set up some tables outside the front of the store so that people can bag their own outside the
Very
store.
cool.
Yeah, but studies are showing that the amount of plastic waste during COVID has gone up 30% year over year.
Ugh.
And there hasn't even been, according to the CDC, one confirmed case of COVID linked to surface transmission. So like hundreds of scientists have signed a petition saying like, come on, stop with the misinformation. Let's get back to, BYO bag, BYO coffee cup, because the science just isn't there.
Yep.
So that's sad. So all of that is going on. This is the world we live in. But in our own home, in my book, Say Goodbye to Plastic, is broken down room by room with tips.
Very cool.
No one's going to tell us that we can't use our own bag in our own house. We get to choose. This is our playground. So my top tip would be, don't worry about what you can't do. Let's think about what you can do. Shine our attention there. Pick your favorite room in the house. I picked the kitchen because I was really into these reusable ECOlunchbox containers. And then I just kind of expanded from there. And then do a plastic audit in whatever room you're going to tackle first.
Okay.
Like literally just make a hit list of what plastic you want to weed out of that room. And in my book, I have a ton of suggestions, and it's all indexed too. So you can go to the back and look at the index if you want to do that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, Sandra, you mentioned tape being made of plastic, and my brain went, oh, right. I guess that probably is plastic. Not something I had thought of. What are some other surprising items that people probably aren't even thinking are made of plastic?
Oh yeah, that's a fun one. Well, one thing that recently came to my attention when I was writing the book, for example, and you think I've been at this for a long time, is those little dishwasher pods that have the bioplastic and you can pop them right in. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. And laundry too. Yep.
In the laundry too, and it's a dissolvable plastic that they have around the detergent, and it seems fine, and they say that it dissolves, but actually these bioplastics, PLAs as they call them, they do dissolve some, but then you have these microplastic bits that get into our wastewater systems, and ultimately they are so small that they flow through, all the trapping and the screening right out into the ocean. And they're mucking up, our waterways, and, then toxins and things attached to these little particles. And then fish think that they're food, and up the food chain. Who's at the top of the food chain? We really don't want to be eating our plastic.
Yeah. So we're getting highly concentrated plastic chemicals. Yeah. And I think, you use the word dissolve.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that's quite the right science word. We know that the plastics don't degrade. They do fall apart. They don't biodegrade. They don't disappear. They don't become nothing, but they do fall apart. And I did want to come back to that microplastic issue, because when you said that the plastic islands in the ocean are now being called smog, I thought, oh no, that's worse, because you can, people could go out and pick up a plastic water bottle from the ocean. We can't pick up the microplastics, right? And this is the biggest problem, is that all these plastic things are just breaking apart into tiny microplastics, which are probably worse than, the bottle or the surgical mask that drives me nuts when I see it on the side of the road.
I know. Yeah. I mean, in those masks, and like baby wipes and stuff like that, they seem like they're fabric, but they're not. It's polypropylene, it's plastic. They have a touch and a feel like it's cotton.
Yeah.
And if it were cotton, it would be biodegradable, and something that could be potentially recycled. They're there is a market. Like if you give your cotton and wool and things to Goodwill or charity, what isn't reused is baled and often sent to India, where it's reprocessed so that you get new recycled cotton out of old cotton.
Mhm.
But a lot of these fabrics and in our wardrobe, what we're wearing is
Yeah,
plastic based as
I'm
well,
sure.
right?
My
Yeah.
shirt today is a little bit shiny, so I know I mean, polyester.
It could be silk though, you
Yeah.
know.
I'm not that fancy.
So yeah. So, once you start to look around and get curious and not just take the first answer that you get, like with
Right.
these bioplastics, it sounds so great. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
they
Yeah,
dissolve.
we don't have to worry about it because this is a plastic made from plants, right? Well, lo and behold, it doesn't biodegrade.
Mm.
It's not all it's cracked up to be. So we just have to be cautious and practical. If you
Mhm.
use things made from natural materials, things that are, grown by our earth, like bamboo kitchen utensils, a bamboo toothbrush,
Mm.
or natural fibers, those things are what you would call, a renewable resource. So, we have a lot of ancient wisdom in us, all of us. But sometimes just life gets hectic and we get reflexive and we just use what we were using
Yeah.
before. I'm here to say, when those dishwasher pods run out, pause and just take a moment and think, okay, am I going to do a correction course here, or am I just going to keep doing, what I've always been doing, even though now I have more information, right? And it's
Mhm.
not going to be more expensive. So I buy powdered 7th generation detergent in a cardboard box.
Yep.
So, I
I
mean, it's
actually
no
had
big
that
deal.
same I sort of had the same come to Jesus moment sometime in the last few months because I was using they're so easy. I don't have to teach
Right?
my kids how to measure them. The dishwasher always runs right. And I thought, microplastics, doggone it. I can't buy you anymore. And I quit. No, no more. Absolutely not. And
Cold
so we're,
turkey right there. You just quit.
well, I mean, I used what I had.
Well,
That,
that's fine.
once
Yeah.
it's there, yeah.
But then you
Um,
transitioned.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone, while you're on Amazon, flagging your account to be plastic free, also cancel your subscribe and saves of the pods, right?
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
won't show up at your house unannounced. Now,
Excellent.
Sandra, a lot of people feel better about themselves and they feel better about their eco-friendly qualities if they recycle. Like, it's okay, Katie. It's okay, Sandra. I use the plastic water bottles, but I recycle. I am saving the earth.
I know.
Is this all it's cracked up to be?
I know. I'm so compassionate when I hear this. And, everyone really is trying to do the best
Yeah.
they can. No one's out there like, trying to, intentionally trash our earth.
No.
But there's a lot of misinformation that makes it hard to know, what the right choice really is. And I have some sad news for all our lovely recyclers. There's something called wish cycling, and it's when you hope that the whatever you're putting in your recycling can, you're wishing, that it's going to be recycled, but
Uh,
in reality, almost no plastic is recycled, especially now because in 2018, China changed its policies and they came up with a new, they call it the National Sword Policy, and they no longer receive all of the United States plastic waste the same as they did before. We used to just ship everything off to China and we're like, hey, just deal with it.
no way.
Whole villages like, sorting the plastics by type, and then grinding it and melting it and making it into pellets. And then, we've all seen products made from recycled plastics,
Yeah.
right? Well, in 2018, the Chinese government is like, you know what? We're not going to be your garbage dump anymore. Like, we're not accepting that. And so some of our listeners, may have noticed that local recycling facilities have gone out of business because now most of our plastic is actually being buried and burned. There are some other developing countries that have stepped up and they're receiving the plastic and we pay them to take the plastic. But in many cases, they don't have good systems in
Mm.
place to get that plastic washed, cleaned, sorted, recycled, and in a circular economy. And so it's getting lost in the environment and ending up, you guessed it, in our oceans,
No
you know,
way.
washing
So
down the rivers.
even in communities where we're paying extra to have a recycle bin next to our trash bin, that recycle bin is going into the trash?
Generally, yes. I mean, yeah, I mean, like there's a little bit of plastic, like the plastic milk jugs are an example of plastic that there's actually a market for, and there's a little bit of value there. But all the numbers on the bottom, like the 3 and the 7 and all of that, it has really been a misinformation campaign by the plastics industry to make us think that if we just tried a little harder and we followed the numbers, you know, that we would be able to use plastic guilt-free and just push it back around, you know, as a recycled product. There was a great show a couple of months ago by Planet Money on public radio, exposing the behind the scenes with plastic industry and about how they've known all along that it's not financially or technically feasible to accomplish that. So we've had a little bit of greenwashing going on,
A lot.
unfortunately.
I honestly, so Sandra, I thought I knew the answer to this question because I have read that plastic recycling is like 20% efficient. So basically, if you've got your plastic jug, you know, you can imagine 20% of it will be recycled and the other 80 is lost in, you know, the manufacturing waste. But now you're really telling me that like all the rinsing we do, all this, not just skip it.
Yeah, I mean, everyone needs to contact their own local recycling agency, and it's probably worth a call and a visit to their website. But if they publish like a graphic with pictures showing what they accept, only put that in your recycling, because you're adding a lot of extra work and cost to their processes if you're wish cycling and putting stuff in there that you hope might be recycled but actually are trash, because then they have to sort all of that out, you know, like juice boxes and like all those kind of shiny mylar like containers that you get broth in, or you know, coconut water in. All of that is just trash. Like the craft boxes that they use for takeout food that are lined with a thin coating of plastic on the inside so the wet food doesn't soak through. It may look brown and may look like it's paper and maybe you can recycle it. It's not. It's coated with plastic. That's trash, you know, and all the clamshell plastic takeout containers, those are not recyclable, you know, and, you know, forks, single-use forks that often are reflexively just, you know, thrown in with all takeout orders. They're made from plastic. They're trash. They're not recyclable.
Right.
So the more we can,
but even if we're really strict about the numbers and like, I know what my center takes, do you think we should talk to our recycling centers and ask them to tell us the like flow of product from my house to a recycled product?
I think, you know, if we're curious consumers and we're asking questions, it's always helpful, right? Only 1 to 3% of plastic globally actually gets recycled. Most of it is buried, burned, or lost in the environment. And that's where we get back to this, you know, the smog.
Yes, that's awful. I'm trying to figure out in my own head right now, like, do I just give up on all recycling? Do I save that money? Do we, you know, I mean, because even though we live a really reusable life, so many things come in plastic, just buying produce, you know, it's comes in, like you said, the clamshells. I always thought those had the number on them.
Yeah. So
no.
Contact your recycling agency. Ask how you can be most helpful, you know, as a recycler. You know, by participating in the program and paying some fee, you're helping to ensure that recycling doesn't go away altogether.
Sure.
In my area, recycling is free, and it's covered as a part of our garbage fees. But more and more recycling agencies, there's no value in what they're collecting, you know, so they can't sell it and help offset the cost of all of the sorting and the processing. So they actually do need the support of fees. So some of what you're putting in there, presumably there is a market for. I mean, certainly the paper is highly recyclable, glass is highly recyclable, all the tin cans, there's still a market for that. So I'm glad
Good.
I thought to say that. It's just the plastic that
Mm,
is a huge thorn in their side. And so
sure.
if we can just choose not to bring plastic into our life so that we don't
Best.
hardly even have plastic that we need to throw away or put in the recycling bin, that's the best. So just, you know, refuse it as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yep. It's reduce, reuse, recycle in that order for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Reduce what we use, reuse what we have, and then at the very last resort, recycle. I actually remember reading a story about plastic bags. So the plastic bags will have the number on them sometimes. And so people throw them in their recycling, and that they would like gum up the systems, and that most recycling places will just throw away the whole truckload if there's anything, plastic bags in there. I thought, oh no, I need to get this straight. And I did call and I asked, I said, listen, I have a very specific question. Are you sure that if it's, if it says number 4, but it's a bag, can I still recycle it? And I mean, this person totally didn't know anything. I could tell. Yeah, I'm sure it's fine. We do number 4. I'm like, this is not what I'm asking. So that was frustrating. Like, I really want to know, like, I really want to do this right. Then again, everyone else in my neighborhood probably is not. So the load would be pitched. Anyway, so reduce, 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 less
Right.
plastic in life.
Exactly. No, we're on a journey here. You know, there's no arriving.
Hmm.
You know, we're never going to be like, oh, now I get a badge for being 100% plastic free and I'm doing
Yeah.
everything right. No, it's iterating and learning and being flexible and persistent. You know,
Yeah.
that's what saying goodbye to plastic is all about. And that's how I approach it with my readers. You know, we're going to do the best we can with what we know.
For sure. And now, how do you talk to kids about this? Because here we are at the Healthy Parenting Connector. We all have children. We like getting them involved in the kitchen. How do you get kids on board with the no plastic mission over the years?
Yeah, a great question. I love all kids, and that's been one of the most fun parts of having Eco Lunchboxes, doing a lot of events and working with
Yeah.
families on how to incorporate all sorts of healthy lunch habits. You know, certainly I want them to be thinking about what containers they use, because you know that's kind of our tool for activating people around this issue. You know,
Nice.
that's why I started the business, is to educate people, inspire them, and then activate them with the lunch boxes. But what about all the stuff that goes into the lunchbox, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
I get questions all the time, you know, not so much now because my kids are older, but certainly when they were in elementary school. Oh, Sandra, you're the lunch lady. You know, in
Funny.
my community, you're that eco lunchbox lady. So what are you fixing your kids? You know, and they're envisioning, you know, amazing little bears cut out of, you know, bread, and, you know, beautiful bento, this and that and the other. And I'm like, you know, I don't pack my kids' lunches. What?
There
You
you
know,
go.
but wait a minute, aren't you like the eco lunchbox lady? I'm like, yeah, you know, they're packing their own lunches. And this was like back, you know, when they were like in kindergarten and first grade, and they're like, what? And so then I'd be like, yeah, you know, it's really important for them to like take responsibility for their own food. And I'm always available to help them. But frankly, you know, my daughter was such a picky eater. I would try, like when she was in preschool, to pack her a lunch, and then she'd be like, oh, that wasn't the right thing. And then she'd
Oh,
send everything home. And I'd be like, okay, this is ridiculous. So what I suggest is to set some basic ground rules for your kids. And the ground rules I set for my kids were: you have to have an entree, something with protein, whether it's a sandwich or a nut butter or a tofu or whatever, an entree and 2 sides. And one of the sides has to have a fruit or a vegetable.
mm.
And I wrote it up and I taped it on the inside of a kitchen
Yep.
cabinet, you know, low where they could see it. I moved all of the eco lunch boxes low. I had them tell me if they wanted me to get anything when I was shopping, right? In advance, like on Sunday.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking you're going to pack for your lunch day? Oh, I don't know. Well, let's sit down and talk about it. You know, getting them to think about what foods they like, taking the power of lunchtime literally into their own hands. And then not being super judgy, not micromanaging, so long as they have an entree, something with protein, and two sides and one fruit or vegetable, call it good.
Mhm.
So that's kind of in a nutshell, you
Great.
know, how I approached it. And I don't know, you probably have great
Sure.
ideas too.
Well, what I love is that you gave the kids the responsibility. You're teaching them to be re- connected, be involved in their own nutrition, but also the containers are just a part of their life. Like that is just completely normal to them. You don't have to explain why you use the containers or about the plastic in the ocean. This is just how it is. And I know in our house we really do the same. We've definitely created a family culture where our kids know like we don't throw things away. We bring home everything from lunch, even if there is on the rare case there's something disposable like a string cheese wrapper. It
Mhm.
comes home because my kids just know they do not walk to the garbage because then I never lose a spoon. I never lose an
Right.
expensive stainless steel container. And all of us, I mean, just if we're out hiking, we all have the same sort of visceral reaction against litter and we pick litter up. And I really think that's important to build that family culture, that family identity, that we are people who care for the earth. We are people who don't throw things away. We are people who use reusable things, and we know why we're doing it because we care for the environment and all the gifts we've been given. So that's it's good. It's good that and any more people we can get to create that family identity and that family culture is step by step how we're going to save the earth, how we're going to reduce plastic. Sandra, you've been so encouraging and inspiring, and so I just want you to like leave our families with one last like note of wisdom, message of hope, and encouraging word as we attempt to set our GPS toward a more plastic free life.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, Katie, when you talked about, setting a culture, within one's own family, to live as eco-friendly as possible. And this is a gift that we can give our kids, these plastic-free lifestyle tricks and tips. Many are things that our grandparents were doing. You know,
Right.
I was going through a scrapbook with my mom. She's 80 now, and so she was in high school in the 50s
Mhm.
in Palo Alto, and she had little ticket stubs and memorabilia from events, and then she had a whole bunch of beautiful beautiful paper straws in lieu of plastic straws stuck right into her scrapbook. And it just hit me like, we're trying to reinvent the wheel here and like not use plastic straws, stop sucking, and yet in our own communities, our elders, have a lot of wisdom, and we're actually living in a much more eco-friendly way, um, when they were younger, and we've all sort of just forgotten about it. So this isn't rocket science. We have to do this all together, talk to our elders, talk to our little ones, and set the GPS for living a plastic-free lifestyle. We can do it. We got this.
Yes, that is very true. And we are all in this together. You said way back at the beginning that this is a we issue, not a me issue.
Right.
So for all of us we's out there, for all of us out there, thank you very much, Sandra Harris, author of Say Goodbye to Plastic, founder of Lunchboxes, one of our favorite stainless steel brands. Very honored to have you here today. And you've definitely taught me a couple little things that I didn't know, even though I, sort of think I'm high up on the eco-friendly scale. So there's always more to learn. We're never at a destination. We're all journeying together. Let's journey with less plastic in our lives, folks. That is one of the many ways that we can raise healthy kids. And I will see you all next week for another episode of the Healthy Parenting Connector. Thanks again, Sandra.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun to talk to you.